Hello everyone, and welcome back to Monsters of the Mind. As always, I'm your host, Mr. G. You may have noticed the long length of this video, and you're quite possibly wondering how on earth I can talk so long about these guys. Well, it's mostly because I just have a lot to say about these guys, and I feel like this needs to be a very thorough episode in order to get my point across. What am I talking about? Today, we're talking about the possibility that dinosaurs, pterosaurs, mosasaurs didn't actually go extinct and are actually living in the Congo or some other remote place of the world. More specifically, the two cards that we have to talk about today are Mckelly and Kangameta. We're not doing the quick facts section for this video because this is already a long enough video without them. So, let's just get into these guys. Mckelly was described as being about the size of an elephant, and some of its earliest sources even mention that it had a nose horn like a rhinoceros, but pretty much everyone has forgotten about this over the years. Mckelly is said to spend much of its time in the water, getting into fights with hippos. Mckelly is said to not be very fond of boats and is described as hurting and even killing people who cross it, but it's said to be an herbivore, so it never actually eats anyone. Okay, enough beating around the bush. The reason Mckelly got famous is because of the fact that it is allegedly a late surviving sauropod dinosaur. Let's talk about this. Okay, so as I'm sure most of you know, 66 million years ago, the Earth was struck by a massive asteroid which wiped out 75% of all life on the planet due to the sun being borderline blocked out, which massively stunted plant growth, which led to herbivores dying, and once they all died, all the carnivores died. Basically, anything bigger than a rat died. This is a pretty concrete theory, and at present, it is the most widely known and accepted explanation for how the dinosaurs died out. Thinking about it like that makes it seem very unlikely that a sauropod of all dinosaurs could have survived, considering how much food sauropods would have had to have eaten per day. In fact, if you ask me, I think sauropods are the least likely dinosaurs to have survived the mass extinction due to just how much food they would have had to have eaten. In addition to this, there's also the fact that we don't have a single skeleton of a non-avian dinosaur that's younger than 66 million years. However, despite all of those facts, people are still convinced that there's a living dinosaur out in the Congo. And what is the evidence for this, you may be asking? Well, there's the fact that locals seem to recognize dinosaurs despite supposedly having very little contact with the outside world. However, this is not a very good piece of evidence. If you go back and look at what locals have said throughout the years, they sometimes refer to Mckelly as either just a rhino, or sometimes even as a spirit that's not meant to be a literal animal. But good luck finding anyone who will admit that. Also, considering the fact that these villages have been visited several times, it's clear that the reason more reports recently have been saying sauropod is because the locals have realized that that's what visitors want to hear, lives in the Congo. And when they say it, they're hoping that it'll drive more tourists in order to find Mckelly. As for the alleged evidence of Mckelly, there's this video, which is most likely just an elephant. There's this statue, which has been proven to have been a modern creation. There's this supposed footprint, which looks almost nothing like a sauropod footprint and is possibly either faked or just a natural erosion that coincidentally looks like a footprint. There's this painting that looks nothing like any known dinosaur. If you ask me, it looks more like a poorly drawn monitor lizard or some type of otter. For me, the final nail in the coffin for Mckelly is just the simple fact that time hasn't treated this beast well at all. If you look at Mckelly depictions, you might notice that it has a droopy tail and is portrayed as an amphibious animal, both of which were things that were thought about sauropods at the time Mckelly was first reported, but nowadays, both of these things have been completely debunked, with it being known that all sauropods carried their tails in the air, and it's been proven that sauropods were not built for an amphibious lifestyle. If they actually did see a live dinosaur, then shouldn't it look more like what we know now about dinosaurs rather than looking exactly like how they were depicted at the time they were discovered? Now, yes, I am aware there's an elephant in the room that I have yet to mention about people who believe in living dinosaurs. Trust me, we'll be getting to that later on. Now let's talk about Kangameta. Kangameta is described as being a large red creature with bat-like wings, no feathers, and a beak full of sharp teeth. Kangameta is said to be highly aggressive and is known to overturn boats and attack people. Much like how Mckelly is said to be a sauropod dinosaur, Kangameta is said to be a living pterosaur of some sort. However, this time, the problem is, much like how time hasn't been kind to Mckelly, it's been especially rough on Kangameta. Pretty much every depiction of Kangameta looks nothing like any identified pterosaur species, with it most resembling the typical Hollywood idea of a pterosaur. Kangameta is usually depicted with a long tail, which is something that only basal pterosaurs had. Later ones had incredibly short, almost unnoticeable tails. It's also said to have bat-like wings, even though all pterosaurs had smooth wings. It's also said to have a naked body, even though we know that pretty much all pterosaurs had the feather-like structures known as pycnofibers. And it's also described as having talons, which is something that no pterosaur had. And finally, some depictions depict it with a spiky head crest, which is also something no pterosaur is known to have. The only pterosaur that has even the slight resemblance to Kangameta is known as Harpagtognathus, I think that's how it's pronounced, which is the only pterosaur to have had a crest, a toothed beak, and a long tail. But even then, it didn't have spikes or talons, and plus, it was an American species that went extinct during the Jurassic. So the odds of that Kangameta are even lower than usual. As for what Kangameta really is, most skeptics think it was either a misidentified bird or an undiscovered species of fruit bat. Once again, there's a big elephant in the room regarding the main proprietors of these myths, but be patient, we'll be there soon. For now, let's go through a bunch of supposed living dinosaur sightings and see how well they actually stack up to science. Kaze rex. Supposedly, in Africa, there's a large theropod that eats rhinos. However, every alleged picture of it has been proven fake, and it has the same age problem as Mckelly, since every picture and drawing of it has it in the pre-70s tripod position, when we now know that theropods would have broken their hips if they stood like this. Plus, almost all known African theropods would have been savanna or desert animals, so we would have definitely seen this guy if he was real. And considering that the prey he eats is said to be rhinos and other big game animals, it's pretty clear we would have found a corpse that had theropod-like bite marks in them. But we haven't found any of those corpses, ever. Burunger, supposedly a living theropod dinosaur in Australia. The problem with this guy is that he's only known from footprints, which are probably the easiest form of evidence to fake. And besides his footprints, there's really nothing this guy has going for him in terms of his existence. The U-28 creature. Allegedly, during a war, when torpedoes are being tested, supposedly a large creature claimed to be a mosasaur was shot out of the water and into the air. The problem here is that considering they only saw it for a few seconds, this could literally be anything. But personally, my money's on it being a beaked whale, since if you only saw it for a few seconds, you'd probably think it was some sort of sea serpent or mosasaur or something like that. After all, just look at these guys. If you only saw it for a brief second, I don't think you would know what you were seeing. The Ropin, an alleged Australian pterosaur that glows in the dark. Same problem as Kangameta, really, in that it's a random mismatch of different pterosaur traits, and also it glows in the dark, which is something that no known terrestrial vertebrate naturally has, and we have no evidence that pterosaurs had ever had bioluminescence. Lone Pine Mountain Demon, supposedly a dromaeosaur of some sort living in the woods. Considering that this is an early eyewitness sketch, I don't think that this is a very good animal to pin being a dinosaur on. As you can see, descriptions of it often give it an absurd amount of wings, and it's said to be capable of flight, even though we know that dromaeosaurs couldn't fly. Their wings were for steering purposes while running. There's also the fact that these guys are said to have a venomous bite, and so far, there's only one dinosaur that's even remotely speculated to have venom, but even then, that's not even a dromaeosaur. Me personally, this seems like just a local urban boogeyman that people have shoehorned dinosaurian features onto to make it more believable. Cambodian Stegosaurus carving. Supposedly, in Cambodia, there's a temple that has a carving that looks like a stegosaurus. But most people actually think that this is just a poorly drawn rhino with leaves behind it. After all, it has a droopy tail, no tail spikes, and it has ears, even though dinosaurs, much like birds, had internal ears that wouldn't have been visible on its body. And like I just said, it has a droopy tail, which is something that was believed at the time that these temples were first uncovered. But nowadays we know that stegosauruses did not have droopy tails. The Ica stones. These things were confirmed to be fake by one of the relatives of the people who discovered them. Not to mention there's the fact that none of the dinosaurs that are allegedly shown on these stones even lived in South America in the first place. Triceratops did not live in South America, and we only have one known ceratopsid that lived in South America, but we have no idea what its horn arrangement was, but it definitely did not just look like a Triceratops. This one also has the same time problem. All the dinosaurs are shown with droopy tails, and all the theropods are shown in a kangaroo stance that we know would have been impossible for them to take. Also, some of these stones just show straight up mythical creatures. Like there are some stones that just show dragons or cockatrices. And there's also a stone that just straight up has a plagiarized design from a book. I'm not even joking. You can see it right here. The Moores Beach Monster, supposedly a toothless plesiosaur. If I have to explain what this one is, I think I'm going to lose faith in my subscribers. St. Augustine Monster, literally just a decomposed basking shark that most likely had an erroneous size estimate. Civil War Pterosaur. The pterosaur looks incredibly fake in this picture, and the soldiers have rectangular belts, despite actual Civil War soldiers having circular belts. Only officers had rectangular belts, and these guys aren't wearing officer outfits. So, yeah, pretty safe to say that this one is a fake image. Alright, I've danced around the issue long enough. Let's talk about the main reason so many people are insistent that dinosaurs are still alive. You see, there's a group of people who are known as young Earth creationists. In a nutshell, they believe that Earth is only 6,000 years old and that dinosaurs and humans live together. Most trips designed to find these still living dinosaurs or pterosaurs or other extinct animals aren't people going out just to find a new life form or something like that. No, no, no. Most of these trips are funded by YECs, and they have the main mission to prove that these things are still alive. And it is their mission to prove that these things are still alive because they believe that if they prove that dinosaurs didn't go extinct, then that'll completely disprove evolution and their beliefs will be validated. In fact, these aren't even a fraction of what YECs present as evidence of late surviving dinosaurs. But, like a lot of conspiracy theories, if you debunk one point, then they'll just bring out more and more evidence that vaguely seems to support their theory, and if you can't immediately debunk it away, then they think they won. So, I'm just gonna end this segment here, because I don't want to have to go through every single supposed living dinosaur sighting. I think I've already gone through enough, and I'm pretty sure you get the point that these are all easily explainable. No Vincent segment, let's just move on to the card. These cards, make me conflicted about how to, rate them. Do I rate them by how accurate they are to saurians, or do I rank them how, accurate they are to their myths? I'm stumped. But, my channel, my rules, I'm ranking these by how paleontologically accurate these guys are. For Mckelly, they gave it spikes going down its neck, but they only gave it a single strip, even though we know that pretty much every sauropod that had spikes had them both going down all the way down its spine, as well as some other spikes on its shoulder areas. Oh yeah, this card also mentions some more evidence that I forgot to bring up. This card brings up the fact that allegedly there were cave paintings found of Mckelly Mbembe, but most experts believe that those are actually drafts, since the creatures in those pictures that are supposedly Mckelly look exactly like how drafts are drawn in other cave paintings in the area. There's also another set of cave paintings believed to be Mckelly, but most scientists agree that those are just lizards. For those ones, you have to really look at them to see any dinosaurian features in them. I guess I should also deduct a point for it saying that it has a long neck like a dino. Dinosaurs in general didn't exactly have long necks. They should have said long neck like a sauropod dino. And I guess I should deduct a point for portraying it as amphibious, but considering that's what the myths say, that's something I'm conflicted on. You know what, let's just give this thing a 7 out of 10, because why not? As for Kangameta, this looks exactly like a Hollywood depiction of a pterosaur. It has teeth despite having a pteranodon-like head. It has claws and talons, both of which are things that real pterosaurs did not have. It has a long rhamphorhynchid-like tail, despite later pterosaurs completely lacking that. And it has a spiked crest, and its body's covered in spikes, both of which are things that no known pterosaur had. From a paleontology standpoint, this thing gets a 4 out of 10, but from a mythology standpoint, 9 out of 10. Why 9, not 10? Meh, why not? I don't feel like hunting down specific incarnations of living dinosaurs in pop culture, so I'll just talk about a reoccurring trope. A reoccurring trope in speculative media is a lost world full of dinosaurs. In fact, in a lot of older stories, it was portrayed that beneath the Earth's crust was actually an island where dinosaurs would live, most famously in the Jules Verne novel Journey to the Center of the Earth. This was mostly based on the idea that there was no such thing as extinction, and that all animals that allegedly went extinct actually went into hiding somewhere. However, this theory quickly got debunked by A, finding out that beneath Earth's crust was just lava, and B, more and more creatures went extinct, and it led people to realize that life on Earth isn't as invincible as they previously thought. Another type of living dinosaur story is an island full of dinosaurs, like in King Kong. The problem with these is that islands probably wouldn't have been exempt from the meteor either, so really an island full of dinosaurs is also pretty unlikely. Well, I think I've talked long enough. This video was over 10 minutes long, and I spent like 12 hours writing the script for this. That's all for this episode of Monsters of the Mind. Join us next time when we talk about a living statue. Goodbye.